Since the league start, I've been playing my Frostbolt Stormweaver, but many people have been asking me, can you play this build as a Chronomancer? And then my answer is yes, you can play it as a Chronomancer, but of course you have to make some changes. So after playing the Stormweaver for around a week, and I'm pretty much done with it, I decided to make a Chronomancer myself and show you what exactly I would do different on this Ascendancy. And the biggest difference on the Chronomancer is that it has crazy recovery because of the Recoup mechanic. The Ascendancy node called the Rapid River makes it so Recoup effects instead occur over 4 seconds. Normally they occur over 8 seconds, so it's basically half the time. With enough investment into Recoup, you can reach around 100% and definitely even more, but as of right now, I have only 100%. You do get crazy recovery. And you combine it with the chest called Sacrosanctum, which makes Recoup effects also apply to Energy Shield. So we recoup life, Energy Shield, and also we can invest into mana recoup, so we pretty much never run out of mana. So that's the big benefit of playing the Chronomancer, but unfortunately, because we have to use multiple uniques on this build, we're not gonna reach as high of Energy Shield as we did on Stormweaver, so we are a little bit weaker against the one-shots. Now, what could I have done is I could have just respec'd my Stormweaver. I would immediately have high level, all of my gear, and I would just change Ascendancy and some other things that I would do differently on Chronomancer, and I would be pretty much done. But that would not show the whole picture of the build, so how do you progress it, how you level it, what do you do in early endgame, and so on. So I decided to start completely new on a new character, go through the leveling, endgame, and so on. So in today's video, I want to talk about the build progression throughout the campaign and the maps, so up to tier 15. And if you want a written guide, you can check out my Ice Nova Snap Chronomancer build guide that I already wrote on Maxroll. And yes, it is called Ice Nova because I actually did make some changes and I realized that Frostbolt is pretty much not needed throughout the campaign. I didn't even use it at all. Ice Nova is more than enough. What I would do now for both Chronomancer and Stormweaver, I actually would just play Ice Nova until you get the Snake Pit ring, and at that point I would swap to Frostbolt. Before you get that ring, I think Ice Nova is just straight up better. So what I recommend for leveling is just like with any other sources build, you start with Spark and you grab a Flame Wall and Frost Bomb. Frost Bomb is just gonna apply exposure debuff, making you deal more damage with all the elements. Flame Wall, you're just gonna put it between you and the enemy, and then sparks are gonna be empowered by the Flame Wall. And also Frost Bomb is gonna generate Cold Infusion, which is gonna empower your next Spark cast. But at level 3, as soon as you get Frost Darts and Ice Nova, you can swap to this setup and completely remove Spark, because Frost Darts is a very good single target ability early on, and Ice Nova is very good for clear. And for the links, I recommend to grab Control Distraction because you can already use it on Spark and then you put it on Ice Nova. And then for more clear, I do recommend Spell Cascade. You could go for something like Magnified Effect or maybe more damage with something else, but I feel like Ice Nova doesn't really need that much damage, and Ice Nova, at least at the beginning, spawns around you. So you really want to have more damage. Then eventually in Act 3, you're gonna grab Astral Projectile, so it's no longer gonna be around you. So you could consider swapping to something else, maybe like Spell Echo, but I actually would just continue playing with Spell Cascade. But yeah, if you need more damage, I would swap to the Spell Echo. So then later, in Act 1, you just fill in the extra supports, and then towards the end of Act 1, you grab Snap. And I would still keep Flame Wall, because you can shoot Frost Darts through the Flame Wall, and they are gonna be empowered. So it is still pretty good damaging abilities. And for the first aura, just pick Arctic Armor. There's nothing really else that is better. Then one big thing is we want to use Overabundance and Spell Echo in Act 2 for the Frost Bomb, because this way you're gonna spawn 2 Frost Bombs instead of 1, and because of this you're gonna get 2 Cold Infusion stacks. And Cold Infusion stacks are very important for the build because they empower Frost Darts, so you deal more single target damage, and Ice Nova deals also more damage with Cold Infusion, so it's better for clear. So what actually I would recommend doing before every boss fight, you can just spawn a Frost Bomb right before the boss, grab 2 stacks from the Overabundance and Spell Echo, then cast another Frost Bomb, grab maybe one more another stack, and then you can put on the next frost bomb so that whenever you're gonna start the fight, you're immediately gonna get another 2 cold infusion stacks, so you can get 6 or even more empowered frost darts pretty much at the start of the fight. And then, of course, for the curse, you're gonna go for elemental weakness, and you can also grab fortress for the flame wall. You actually don't have to use it. I pretty much almost never use it, but if you want to have a bit more single target damage, you can also put it down, but it's a little bit more annoying to use it. And Snap counts as all 3 elemental damage types, so it is lightning, cold, and fire, which means it actually triggers Rising Tempest. So every time you cast Snap, Rising Tempest is gonna make it deal more damage, so 36% more damage. So at this point you can put Rising Tempest of every other damaging ability, and yeah, the way you trigger it is through just casting Snap every few seconds. Or Elemental Weakness, it also has all 3 elemental damage types, but yeah, Snap is enough. Then in Act 3, like I already mentioned, you get Astral Projection. This is when build becomes way more fun to play because you can cast Ice Nova anywhere you want. You don't have to cast it around you. And then we also grab the Frost Wall with Icicle, so it has less life, and Spell Cascade, so you spawn more of them. It is a little bit annoying because the way you detonate Frost Wall is either cast like 2, maybe 3 Frost Novas depending on your damage. But what you can do is you can freeze the enemy around next to the Frost Wall, and then use Snap on that frozen enemy. And if you do that, that is going to cause chain reaction, which is also going to detonate the frost walls. So you cannot use Snap on frost walls themselves, but you can use it on a frozen enemy next to the frost wall. But if you spawn frost walls next to the, let's say, the boss, they are not really gonna deal enough damage to freeze him. Frost darts also cannot freeze the enemy, so the only way for you to realistically detonate Frost Wall is through the Ice Nova. But if you cast Ice Nova, you're gonna lose Cold Infusion stacks, which you would prefer to spend on Frost darts, so it is a little bit annoying. Sometimes you will freeze enemy with Frost Wall, which is perfect. If that happens, you immediately just snap, and then you cast Frost darts. But what you also can do is you can just cast Frost Darts and maybe some Ice Novas, Frost Bomb or something until you freeze enemies. And when you notice the boss is frozen, then you immediately cast Frost Wall and detonate it with Snap. So first you freeze and then you cast a Frost Wall. And if you don't freeze, you just cast Frost Darts. But again, Frost Darts cannot freeze enemies, so you're never gonna have that situation if you just use Frost Darts. So it is a little bit annoying for single target. And Siphon Element is just gonna give you some additional infusion stacks when you freeze, ignite, or chill enemies, or shock enemies. Then in Act 4, you just add additional support, so just more damage, better effect of exposure, and so on. Cooldown for Frost Wall, nothing really crazy changes. And then in maps, we add even more damage, but we also add cast on Elemental Ailment with Comet, so Boundless Energy, Efficiency, and Rising Tempest. So this is just a classic setup that you use before. Later on, of course, you swap to cast on Crit. For the passive tree, it's pretty much the same what I would do on the Stormweaver. So just go through the elemental damage nodes, some spell damage, and you want to make sure you utilize the weapon swap. So you take the exposure effect only on the second weapon set. So this is the green line. So you take it here, here, and also the curse effect. And the red line, so the first weapon set, you put on any other damage nodes. So here we have damage here, here, and here, and here. And when you do that, you want to make sure that all of your abilities in your skills are set to weapon set 1, and only Frost Bomb and the Curse is set to weapon set 2. So this way it still gets the effect of the increased exposure effect and the Curse magnitude. For the rest of the points, you want to go for as much freeze buildup as possible, because it's going to help you with freezing enemies with the Frost Nova, and then you can snap them after they are frozen, and snap is just gonna kill all of them. So we get freeze buildup with climate change, inescapable cold, and also the affliction enforcer. And then after you get all of your damage node, and I forgot here, we also get some additional freeze buildup here. And after you get all of the damage nodes and freeze build up, then you can start investing into energy shields. So we go for energy shield here and here to the left. And also you can go for enhanced barrier eventually. But then once you reach the end game and you acquire the Sacrosanctum chest, you should swap to the Recoup tree. And that's when we drop a lot of stuff on the left side here and we go for the Recoup. So you go for the infused flesh, the loose flesh, toad flesh, and also the pliable flesh. There's also a lot of other recoup modifiers. Oh, and I also forgot glazed flesh. All of them are called flesh. There's also the hard tissue, which gives you even more recoup, and all of the small nodes give 3% more per point. But it is kind of far, so for now I did not go for this one. It is also highly recommended to get adverse growth as an anoint, because this is gonna give you 20% damage taken recouped as mana. There's not that much mana recoup on the tree, so this is a pretty big one. And I would eventually also drop the Shattered Crystal. It is pretty good early on to reduce the life of the Frost Walls, but later you don't need it usually. There's even more of the recoup, like here, 10% physical damage as recoup, but I don't really like going for specific damage type recoups. The only ones that I'm going for is here, because these are actually a lot of recoup, 20% per, and you get a lot of the like 3% per small point, so I went for this one. But yes, as of right now I did not go for the recoup here, but maybe I'm gonna do that later on. But yeah, as of right now I don't think it's really needed. And for the Ascendancy, you want to start with Quicksand Hourglass, which is just gonna give you 60% more cast speed and 60% actually increased cast speed and 60% increased area. But it does go down during the 10 seconds and then it starts going back up again. So that's how the Sands of Time works. It's just changing between 0 and 60% of increased cast speed and increased area of effect. Then now and again, it's gonna give you a chance to not consume cooldown, and we are using multiple cooldowns. We are using Frost Bomb, Snap, and Frost Wall, so it helps with all of these abilities, so it's pretty good point to take. And then in the end game, you take the Recoup. If you can get the fourth one before getting the Snake Pit, I also would go for something like Unbound Encore for the time snap. This is gonna just reset all of the cooldowns, but I'm still not sure what I'm gonna do. I'm probably gonna experiment with all of the other ones. Maybe you go for time freeze, but I don't know if I'm gonna need it. And it does take 2 points, which means I'm gonna have to drop either Now and Again or Quicksand Hourglass to go for the time freeze. I guess we're gonna have to see for the next version of the build. And for the gear, just like any other caster build, you want to focus on +2 level of skills, in this case cold skills on your wand and focus, and also maybe some plus level to all spell skills on the amulet. Other than that, just cast speed, spell damage, any of the damage as extra is pretty good. And of course, the percentage cold damage is also fine. And on the other pieces of gear, you just want to focus on life, resistances, and some amount of energy shield. You can also get maybe percentage increased cold damage on rings, but it's not really that important. And also you can get some cast speed. But later on, once you swap to Recoup, so when you get Sacrosanctum, you also want to get Scourge's Brittle and the Midnight Braid, because this is a pretty good combo that helps with your mana recovery. So anytime you cast a spell, you're gonna take physical damage equal to the mana cost. But because we go for the Recoup, and you should reach around 100% Recoup, then all of that cost and all of that damage you're gonna take is gonna be immediately recouped, well, over 4 seconds. But also what it's gonna make you is recoup the mana. So thanks to this belt, you're gonna recover 50% of the mana that you spend on the spell. And if you have Anoint Adverse Growth, it's gonna be another 20% for a total of 70%. You could still get even more than that, maybe as a suffix on Amulet, you can get up to 20% mana recoup, maybe more on the tree, but as of right now, with this budget, 70% is more than enough, and it definitely helps with mana recovery. Chronomancer definitely has easier time with mana recovery than Stormweaver thanks to this combo. But now, because we are using 3 unique items and we also want some Recoup on Amulet with +2 skills, and we still need total of 30 spirit between chest and amulet. And chest, by the way, has a spirit as an implicit, so it is a little bit easier. It is kind of hard to get all of the resistances. So try to get as much resistances on other pieces of gear, so rings, boots, and the gloves. Fortunately, Sacrosanctum gives a little bit of chaos res, and a belt gives some elemental resistances. And now we also, by the way, have to focus on chaos res, because unlike the Stormweaver, we are not going for chaos inoculation, because we still want to be able to recoup life. So now we actually have to get some chaos resistances. And then there's also a pretty interesting flask that has been added this league, Blood of the Warrior, and this one gives you actually 30% of damage taken recoup as life. So it's basically free 30% recoup, and the flask lasts pretty long time, around 7 seconds depending on your roll. So you just cast it every or use it every like 7 seconds and you're gonna get this effect. So it's a very powerful flask for this build. Now I want to show you the build in game. So here you can see all of the gear, and this is exactly the same gear that I show in the build guide. So Sacrosanctum, Skull's Brittle, Midnight Bargain. I have one with +4 and nothing too crazy on other modifiers. The focus just +2, and again nothing crazy on other modifiers. In total I did spend on this gear I think a little bit less than a divine, maybe around 100 exalts, somewhere around that. Most of the pieces of gear are between 1 and 10 exalts per. And I do have 75 of all resistances. The only one that I'm not capped is chaos, so 62. I do have 88% all damage recouped as life and 20% additional elemental and physical. So in total, more than 100%, especially for the physical, because that's important for the helmet, so that you always recover the amount of life you spend on your spell. So just to show you, here you can see my energy shield is immediately recouped from the damage I take from using the spells. And the ways, all of the different ways to get the recoup as of right now is, well, first of all, from the passive tree, so here, here, and here. Also, Sacrosanctum gives up to 10% to try to get good roll. Then on the helmet, you can get 6% from the socket. And then on amulet, I think you can get up to like 24%. I got this amulet for pretty cheap. It is with spirit +1 and recoup. So unfortunately, it's only 18%. But remember, you can still use the flask, which gives additional 30%. I actually don't know if it shows it in here. Yes, it does. So with Flask up, I have 118% and additional 20. So I have like almost 140% recoup. So more than enough. So basically, after you reach 100%, every additional recoup you have actually serves as like an over recovery. So if you take, let's say, 1000 damage, you're gonna recover. If you had like 150 recoup, you would recover 1500. So actually a recoup faster than you basically lose life. But you are not immortal. If you take more hits within the 4 seconds than Recoup can recover, you're still going to die. Or if you are just one-shotted. So right now I have 1.4k life, 4k ES. So if I would take a hit that takes like 6k of my life, I would still just die to one hit. For the skills, this is again the copy from the guide. It's just 5 links. I don't have any 6 links. Even some of them are still as 4 links, like Frost Darts. And for the auras, I'm using Castle Elemental Element, Siphon Element. And my comet with Castle Elemental Element is 4 links still. And for the levels of skills, I am only using level 18 right now. Plus 8, of course, from gear and so on. Now let me show you tier 15 maps. It is not gonna be super smooth because of course I still don't have like a craziest gear. Let's use maybe like 2 exalts. Unfortunately, there are many bad modifiers for the build. First of all, of course, elemental resistance is pretty bad, but it's nothing too crazy. But the modifiers that are extremely bad for the build are things like that. Players have 37% less recovery rate because that's gonna affect your recoups. You're gonna get less recoups. So this one would be especially bad because it has less recovery and also resistances. Things like temp chain, of course, are pretty annoying and elemental weakness, but that's just something every build has to deal with. But yeah, I would definitely avoid maps with less recovery unless you just want to be super safe in these maps. Just don't run into the dangerous packs of monsters. So let's go. Actually, let's go to this map. It's a little bit more open. Just to show you. I still have to work on my damage or freeze buildup because my Ice Nova unfortunately is not freezing enemies in one hit usually. So here, just to show you, it's not freezing them. Usually it takes 2 hits and then you just snap them all. So 1, 2, oh, this one didn't freeze, and boom, you detonate them. So that's basically how the build works. Occasionally you're not gonna have to snap because Comet is gonna kill everything, or you can just cast the Frost Walls and kill enemies this way. So yeah, the damage is of course for tier 15 still not like the craziest, but my gear is still on a budget. After I'm gonna next start to invest into more damage, and also I'm gonna get 6-link, get more better skill gems from going from 18 to 20. I mean, my damage is just gonna skyrocket. And of course, pretty soon I am gonna swap to the Frostbolt version of the build with custom crit, which is gonna be even better. This is just to get you through the maps so you can start farming for things like Snake Pit. I just wanna find like one rare monster just to show you single target a little bit more. Here it is. So Frost Bomb, the weakness, cast some walls, and then snap, and yeah, most of the rares just die to that combo. And also remember that that's the map with monsters have 46% elemental resist and 29% damage, life as extra energy shield. So they were pretty tanky. Usually maps are a little bit easier than that. And just to showcase my recovery, let's run into some monsters, maybe like here. At the start it's pretty low, but the more you get hit, the better recovery you get. I didn't even press my flask yet, now I'm gonna press it. And now we get even better recovery. So yeah, you're never really gonna die to white monsters. You're still going to occasionally get one-shotted by rares and stuff like that. So you're still going to die, of course. But yeah, it's definitely much harder to die while mapping on this build than on the Stormweaver. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I'm of course gonna work on the build more, and then when I'm gonna have much better gear with more damage, I'm gonna transition to Snake Pit with Frostbolt. I'm gonna make a update video. So that's gonna be it for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.